Well, welcome to this week's Borders Rugby in Focus with Dale Clancy and myself. And although we don't have anyone with us today in person, we've got a few guests on the show, including Gavin Hastings, Tom English and Ian Landles, who all have special programmes at the Borders Book Festival next week to promote their books. Two of them with Lions connections and one about the possible origins of rugby going back even further than William Webb Ellis. November is just around the corner, and that means Movember will be with us too as rugby players start growing some outrageous moustaches in a bid to raise money and awareness for charity. We'll be joined by Cowan and Craig Dods to talk about that as well. But first, let's look back at the weekend's rugby and talk about a few of the games which caught our eye. And we begin with Dale Clancy and the Premiership and a 7-try romp for Hawick at Stony Hill against Musselburgh.
Yeah, a really big impressive performance for Hawick on the road. We know they've had some difficult travels this far in the Premiership campaign, so really big result to get for them, especially because Musselburgh were celebrating a big anniversary as well. It was kind of a big day, built up really well for them, and Hawick went up and spoilt the party, and they'll be, good to welcome back Andrew Mitchell and Sean Muir. I think they're perhaps two players that they were missing in the squad. Certainly Andrew Mitchell, certainly in the midfield, they were maybe lacking that big ball carrier who could mix it up in midfield. They had the games that we've seen so far, two very good centres, but you feel he just brings a different dimension. Very, very good on the ball, direct runner, good skill set, and he's been in an environment where it's been quite driven at the Southern Knights. Comes back to Hawick and he can kind of contribute to them. And Sean Muir as well up front, a great addition back to the front row for Hawick.
Good for them to get a try bonus at last, because they haven't had one of them for a wee while.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things at the top of the league where these try bonuses are starting to come into play a little bit more. They're losing bonuses as well, but certainly more for Hawick, the try bonus, especially against Jed. That was a game that they should have perhaps had the try bonus, but just lost control of the game and completely dictating it. They fell off the wagon quite a lot there. So to get the try bonus on the road, it'll do their confidence a lot of good going into this weekend, which is a huge game for them.
Now, Selkirk, they went to Glasgow Hawks 33-0 down at the break, but they did turn it round and score 4 tries, actually won the second half when they got the try bonus. So how do you think they'll be looking at that result?
I don't know, probably at half time I think they would have probably taken anything from that game, so the fact that they've got the 4 tries, they'll be over the moon. It's been a bit of a story of Selkirk season though. I think they've been unlucky. They've just been grossly unlucky with injuries and personnel. So to be on the end of what could have been a hiding, to show a lot of character, to come back into the game, to salvage something is a big confidence booster for them. It's not where they want to be, and at the beginning of the season it's perhaps not where I would have placed Selkirk anyway. But I think it's a lot down to luck more than anything else at this stage, that they've lost a lot of key personnel, but it shows that the players that they've got in the park, they can still do a job, and they're starting to welcome a few of these players back. We've said it week after week, but when they welcome these players back, they'll start to see a more true reflection of what Celtic rugby are all about in the Premiership, because they've really not got going this season at all.
Jed Forest against Curry, it was always going to be a difficult one at Riverside Park for them, and so it proved they lost that game. Yeah,
Curry are a team riding up high, the top end of the Premiership. I think it's really, in the mix between Hawick, Mar, Curry at the moment, and they're certainly the 3 big teams up there. So Jed are a team that are needing to find a little bit of form as well. A difficult defeat at Mansfield Park a couple of weeks ago. They were never in that match at all until the second half, where they started to galvanise a little bit, get back into the game, find some field position, and it was like it took them a bit of time to wake up. And I feel that they're one of those teams that at the moment they'll thrive on being the underdogs, but they're not the worst team in the league. They've got the capabilities of being one of the best teams in the league, but it's just finding that form and finding that formula to get them to unlock defences, because they've got the personnel there. But against Curry, they're always going to be formidable. A very difficult team, and Curry are one of the front runners for the Premiership.
Now, International 1, the game that we were at, the derby at the Green Yards, the much hyped derby, and Gala getting the better of Melrose on that one, and that's done them the world of good. And of course, they go top of the table. The reason for that, because Biggar have actually got more match points, but Biggar were docked 3 points for that match that they couldn't play. They couldn't get a front row together, and so they were docked 3 points. The match will be played, but they're now behind Gala by default.
Yeah, and I think it's starting that league is starting to settle out now. We've obviously the early editions of this. We were speaking about the likes of Kelso and Melrose. Melrose were going really well. Gala were getting into it, and I feel that when you look at the top of the table, you can see obviously them and bigger, but the points against for Gala is really impressive. They've conceded less than 100 points, and I think that's at this stage in the campaign is very impressive. And this weekend showed how really cohesive their defence is. They did leak that one try, Aidan Cross going in. It was a very well worked move on the blind side from Colvin, and a bit of interplay back inside. But apart from that, Melrose really never threatened Gala at all. They were throwing everything at Gala, and they held really firm. I think Gala made Melrose look probably worse than they are. And I think that's a lot on the way that they dictated the play. They pretty much, apart from a 15-minute period, they bossed that game. They dictated everything about that game. So Gala was very, very impressed with. Attackingly, I think Craig Dods is, I think if he plays till he's about 60-year-old, he'll get better every year, because he just seems every year he gets better. His basics get better. His knowledge of the game, it shines through, and when you watch that at the weekend, he was just leading and he was just pulling the strings like a typical 10 should. So very impressive from Gala. And Melrose, I think they'll be disappointed. They didn't really show up at their own patch, but I think that had a lot to do with the way that Gala actually played.
Now, Kelso were looking for, obviously, a result, a win after a couple of disappointing score lines, but also a good performance. Now, talking to Bruce McNeil afterwards, they got the win, they didn't get the performance.
Yeah, and I think that's in a lot of these games when you're playing the teams that lower down, where you want to try and pile the points on. That's sometimes the performance is more important than the actual victory. But these games, that the teams at the bottom, they're scraping for anything that they can have, and they sometimes make games really, really difficult. Sometimes it's maybe a bit of personnel as well. So yeah, Kelso will be disappointed, because I think they've started the season really well, and they're starting to then fall off a little bit, mainly down to the form of the likes of Biggar and Heriots now and Gala. So yeah, it's difficult, but if they're not happy with the performance, it gives them stuff to work on and get that continuity and that consistency that Kelso they've certainly been threatening to have this season so far.
Well, in National 2, Peebles did the business on Gordorians. That was always on the cards. But in National 3, a fantastic result for Berwick, who've been frustrating this year in terms of not getting games, matches called off. And off the back of no match, they went to Hillhead Jordan Hill, who were unbeaten in 6 games, and got the result, 32-22. Yeah,
that's a huge result for them, because on the travels so far this year, Berwick have come up short against a couple of teams. And Murrayfield Wands, I think, was one of them. I think Last Wade was perhaps the other team that they've came up short against, and that's sometimes really demoralising for teams, because when they come up short in such fine margins and pivotal points in a game, it can dent your confidence. But to go to Hillhead Jordan Hill, it's a big travel as well from Berwick, so a big journey up on the bus, and then to try and get off the bus and get that performance, and they've obviously been able to do that, and it really lays down a marker, because there's still a lot of rugby to be played in that league. And although the positions in the league perhaps don't really give a true reflection of where Berwick are at the moment, they're one of the teams that are going to be up towards the top come the end, because they've got to welcome Murrayfield Wands and Last Wade down to Scremerston, so it's a difficult place to go, and Berwick will be wanting to try and keep these wins coming and keep the momentum, because they've certainly looked like they've got a good vibe about the club just now.
Into the East League, and 2 wins out of 5 for our teams this week. And Hoytlandine got a win at home, much needed after, I think it was 5 defeats. And then Galloway M going on the road and winning at Liberton. Yeah, a good win for both teams, but Galloway M, it's certainly because they've been hit hard with injuries recently. I think it's been kind of well documented in how they've lost key personnel, and it's difficult at any level of rugby when you lose these players. It's hard to replace them, especially when it's sometimes a little bit more social down in those leagues. So it does a lot for your confidence to pick up that win. It's difficult, because you want to try and keep the momentum going. They had a good start to the season, certainly positive energy about the club, but then when the losses start coming and the nights get darker, it's hard to try to keep these players there. So the best way to do it is wins and good nights out. So a win's a start, and I'm sure they all had a good night out as well. And Langham surprisingly lost at home to Leith.
Yeah, Langham, I think, or speaking to Stephen Nichol, who's just joined our work, and he was explaining the last couple of weeks have been a bit unfortunate. They had a kind of innocuous red card, and their defence has been pretty poor over the last 2 weeks. He said they conceded a what would have been described as by their team as a worldie, but by Langham, they were very disappointed with the way that they I think a winger maybe beat about 5 players, and you know it's difficult when you concede a try like that when it's so sloppy and it's down to individual errors, and that's not been like what Langham's been like this so far in this campaign, because they've been pretty formidable. So they need to try and galvanise themselves, get back and get some good results, because two losses in a row can start to kind of set in, and it can be a big rut for the rest of your season.
I must just mention the East League Reserve 2, because that was Melrose Storm against Gala A, and this was one that Melrose Storm did actually win, and win in some style as well. And it was a fantastic game of rugby. It was the curtain raiser to the big Melrose Gala game in National 1, and I must admit I was very impressed with some great tries there. Yeah,
there was. It was I caught, I think, the last 40 minutes of that, and it was really open, really, you know, a really good level of rugby. I was down there with my brother-in-law Connor Blythe, and we were watching the rugby and went round for a coffee and explain it, and just speaking about the level that it would probably fit in, and what high level of skill was set by both players. And there's no surprise, you know, you've got a lot of players in there that have played first team rugby over the last few years for both Melrose and Gala. Dean Keddy to name one in Gala, and then you had Brown in the Melrose side as well, you know, a good winger. So they've got a lot of good personnel in there, but it's refreshing to see. I think it was really good, because you had Melrose Storm versus Gala A before, and then the big match after, and I think the crowd obviously showed what a big part of the weekend it was for them, because it was a good crowd, healthy crowd, nice and dry, and it was a good afternoon of rugby for everybody.
And into the semi-junior, just to end up our little weekend roundup. And this was Peebles Colts against Hawick Youth. Hawick Youth were unbeaten. Very, very nearly came unstuck. I think it was a guy called Patrick Cannon playing centre who just fumbled the ball over the line. It was dislodged over the line on his way to a hat-trick. That would have put them 8 points clear with very little time left. They very nearly got it, and then of course Hawick go up the other end of the field and win the game. But you know, it's very interesting there to see Hawick Youth wobble a little bit against a very good Peebles Colts team.
Yeah, I think firstly, speaking about Melrose and Hawick, what I've seen of them so far this season it's been an excellent level of semi-junior rugby. I think the skill set is far greater than what I can ever recall at that level, and it's going to be really interesting. Obviously, this weekend, those two teams lock horns and somebody's undefeated record's got to go. But I feel with Peebles, I think that this is a huge opportunity for them to really harness the promising youth that they've got and that demographic that they've got in the area, because it's been a town which has almost been bursting at the seams for a long time, and they've got an abundance of players, but somehow I don't feel they filter through. So I don't want to speak out of turn, but I certainly think that if Peebles had a real rugby head on them now, they would be able to really harness that, because the guys that they've got coming through are so committed. They're well coached as well at that level. The under 18s and under 16 coaching staff are really, really, you know, into it, and I feel it's a great opportunity for Peebles, because in 5 years' time we could be looking at Peebles as being one of these big teams, and that you know, I'm an ex-Peebles guy. I'd love nothing more, but there's also the side that they just assume that they're going to come through. So hopefully in the next few years these players do progress and play first team rugby, but I'd love to see them pick up some honours at youth rugby as well, because it's some of the best times of your life playing with your mates from school at that level. So difficult to try and keep that continuity, because they've got everything else in life. This is a hobby, but Hawick again managing to just when their backs are against the wall, come out swinging, pick up the win, and it sets up an amazing clash this weekend. I think this is going to be a real high level of rugby, as opposed to every other fixture that's on this weekend. I think Hawick Youth against Melrose is the one that stands out.
It certainly is. We'll be talking more about that a little bit later on. But right now, let's have a little break, because we're just round the corner is November, and that means Movember, and we're going to find out right now about this year's campaign locally.
trying to use the previously established Border League, and we're using that to develop a Movember Border League. So what we're trying to do is kind of pit the border clubs against each other, use that rivalry to put it towards a good cause, so to raise money and awareness for men's mental health. So we've found in this last lockdown that everyone's mental health has took a big hit, but if we especially look at that kind of men that are playing rugby, that 20 to 34 age group, suicide has been for a long time, but it remains to be the #1 cause of death. So it's really just trying to kind of raise more awareness, get guys talking to each other, and just wearing that kind of, growing that moustache allows you to have a badge to say that you're here for your teammates, you're here to speak to each other. So yeah.
So how does it all work?
So basically every border club has a team captain. They have started their own Movember team, and then we've put them all, so from East 3 up to Premiership, all of the border clubs are on a league table against each other. And then whenever any money is donated towards that player, that will then go towards that team, and then we can get a little league table, see who's raised the most money towards Movember. That money then goes towards projects by Movember, such as Ahead of the Game. So that is where we're using sport as the kind of the background to get people speaking about mental health. So it shows players, coaches, parents how to address mental health, to be able to speak to the players. Yeah.
And I imagine it'd be a fairly easy thing to get all the clubs together. You'll have to mention the words Border League and they're there.
That's it. Everyone wants to win. So we just use that competitive energy that we've got in the borders to put it towards a good cause. So yeah, all of the clubs have been really good. They're all keen to get involved. A lot of them do Movember separately by themselves. So it's nice just to get everyone together and just sort of put all our efforts towards one thing.
As a club, you know, we are always promoting sort of good mental health. It's a real tough thing at the moment. Men aren't confident to speak about this sort of thing, but you know, we want to promote it as a club, and you know, as a club together, getting it and coming out in the pitch with our Movembers. There'll be a few guys that'll struggle to grow them, myself included, but it'll be a good laugh as well.
Well, you're not doing too bad at the moment, but that'll go very shortly.
I'll need a clean shave at the end of October, going into November. But you know, it's a really strong case. Like I say, I can't remember the exact stats, but there's a lot of suicide, male suicide around Scotland, around Britain. So the more we can do to raise awareness, to know that we can talk to somebody. You know, I think with rugby clubs, we have a natural sort of out. You know, we can go down and speak to people, albeit there's mick taken out of everyone, but we know when we need to be serious and somebody really needs a chat, everyone gets round them.
And all the clubs are getting involved?
Yeah, I believe there's a Border League. Dave Cowan, great guy, has organised a Border League Movember, so looking to try and raise money right across the border, so we'll have a little league table at the end.
And Movember, as we know, has been going a few years now, but I guess it's even more important after COVID.
Yeah, 100%. So they found in lockdown that almost half of the men that they interviewed, that Movember interviewed, felt like they had no one to speak to about their mental health throughout lockdown. But on comparing that, most men said that their mates could speak to them. However, they felt they didn't have anyone to speak to. So it's really important for us as young men just to feel like you can speak to each other. They've also found that 2 out of 3 men would rather be seen as a kind of a loose cannon. Well, you're a loose cannon on the rugby pitch, you're someone with anger problems. You'd rather be seen as that than rather being seen as someone who's vulnerable. So I think it's really important to change that kind of mindset we've got around mental health. Make it okay for guys to speak to each other. If you're not feeling great, you've got someone that you can go and speak to, and just to realise that you're not alone.
Well, Borders Rugby Television will be at the Borders Book Festival at Abbotsford on November the 2nd, that's next Tuesday, for an event hosted by Tom English of BBC Radio Scotland and featuring Finlay Calder and Jim Telfer. They'll be talking about the famous 1997 Lions Tour of South Africa, which Jim was heavily involved in and made that amazing Everest speech. Well, we'll be filming that, but if you want to be in the audience for that, you can book tickets at bordersbookfestival.org. And also Gavin Hastings has written a book about the 1997 1993 Lions Tour, which was the final one of the amateur era. We'll be hearing from him shortly, and also from Ian Landles and Billy Gillies, who I spoke with at Abbotsford yesterday. So enjoy a short feature now with Ian, Gavin, and first, Tom English. Tom, it's a fascinating subject for a book, of course, and one that I'm sure you enjoyed getting your teeth into.
I did, Stuart. Yeah, look, I mean, we all remember that tour. We all remember, certainly if you don't remember the tour, you remember the Living with Lions video, which I think kind of propelled that tour into the heart of every rugby-loving fan. I'd say it's more so than any other Lions tour because it seems more intimate to us. Because we were on the inside, it was a fly-on-the-wall documentary. Even though if you weren't in South Africa, you felt like you were there because of the close-up coverage that we got from that documentary, and the tour and that video really inspired the book.
And it's very interesting as well because Gavin Hastings is also at the Borders Book Festival, and he was captain of the Lions in 1993, 4 years before, and that was the last amateur era Lions tour, and this was the first of the pro. It was a fascinating insight and something that had never really been done before.
Never been done before, absolutely. Certainly not in rugby. Other sports had done it. In America, there had been similar kind of fly-on-the-wall things done. But this was certainly rugby's first crack at it, and there was a naivety and an innocence to it. And all the players initially were some of them were a bit reticent about it, but the camera guys were so skillful and so subtle that very quickly on that tour that the players forgot that they were even there. So that was a brilliant piece of work that they did. You know, they captured something majestic. It was the first professional tour, but there was still the remnants of the amateur ethos there, and you could see that camaraderie, that boozing, heroic boozing sessions. All of that stuff was still there. That comes out in the book for sure, and they were up against this beastly opposition, world champions, seemingly unbeatable, with the two great Scots, with McGeechan and Telfer pulling the strings. They managed to obviously find a way of beating them, and it's a pretty epic way that they did it.
You were saying to me this is actually the first time you've done kind of like a live event in support of your book, so it's going to be quite fascinating, quite interesting for yourself as well, and no doubt what you've just told me will be discussed, and plenty of other stories as well. So what else can we expect from the night?
Well, Finn Calder, the great Finn Calder will be there, and the great Jim Telfer will be there. Delighted to share a stage with those two guys. I will certainly feel a little bit in awe of them for sure, or a lot in awe of them, considering everything that they have done in the game, and the nothing that I have done in the game apart from write a few books. So I'm really looking forward to meeting them. Jim I know really, really well. Finn I don't know well, but I hear so many amazing things about him. So I'm looking forward to meeting those guys and just talking rugby.
Ian, tell us about your event, which is happening on Wednesday.
It's a conversation with Finlay Calder and Duke Richard of Buccleuch and Billy and I, and we're going to be speaking about and launching this book about the Catterhawk Ball game, which took place on the 4th of December 1815. And 200 years later we had a reenactment on that same day in 2015, and it's taken us 6 years to get the book out. Lord John Scott, the Duke's brother, has been publishing it in Turkey. The book's got stuck at the Bulgarian border because of Brexit, but they're at last here, and they're going to be available on the day. And 1815 was when we reckon rugby began, long before William Webb Ellis did or did not do what he allegedly did in 1823. We believe rugby began here in the Borders with that reenactment.
As you mentioned, 8 years before William Webb Ellis allegedly, during a football match, picked up the ball and ran with it. And of course, World Rugby at the moment are taking the World Cup trophy as the William Webb Ellis trophy as well. Does that make you a little bit peeved?
Oh, it should be the Catterhawk trophy. Yeah, they go to William Webb Ellis's grave at Menton in the south of France and lay a wreath whenever there's World Cups on. But it is a very mystifying start. Nobody's really sure what happened. The date is doubtful. William Wellis himself is doubtful. There's another person, it's reckoned, probably did it, but he was later expelled from the school, and they used William Wellis, the clean living clergyman, as a better role model. But it was never mentioned until about 50 years after the incident took place.
And do you think that the World Rugby is not recognising that event the way they should do?
No, I think it's an overlooked event, and it was great that we were able to bring it back into prominence by doing the reenactment and also by publishing this book.
So the talk is going to be happening on Wednesday. Billy, perhaps we'll bring you in here and you can sort of mention a little bit of what's going to be going on.
Yeah, well, the Duke decided they wanted to do a reenactment, the 200th reenactment. They couldn't do the 100th one because of the First World War. So we got in touch with a friend of mine, a great friend of mine, Hugh Hornby, who'd of course just died not long ago, but he was a great historian and he brought all this together. He was the curator of the first museum for the FA in England. And they asked him, English Heritage asked him to write books about all the games. So the 15 games of handball and football thing, he wrote them all up. And then, being he was asked his prominence, he was asked to come and help to set this game up. So he asked me, and I got in touch with the people that played the game because I've been involved with the ball all my life. And I got them, and then we needed a new ball made to play in the game. And we decided to get it made at Workington because they have a great game down there, and they were willing to come up and fight for the ball to take it back to England. But actually the ball's in Jedburgh because it was hailed by a local lad and it's there. So the whole thing is made a great day. We had the Duke and everyone turned up, and we had Walter Scott there, we had all the people, pageantry, flags, and it was a great day. So this is what we're going to be talking about next week.
Well, it's all fascinating stuff, and it's great to have you two guys around to tell the stories, and we all look forward to Wednesday when you'll be in conversation with Finlay Calder and other people as well, and all the very best with it. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, Gavin, welcome to the programme. You're, of course, coming to the Borders on Saturday, the 6th of November at midday to talk about your book, Legacy of the Lions. What was the reason behind writing it now after 28 years?
Well, I guess during lockdown, I was searching for things to, I suppose, keep myself busy. And I thought, if ever there was a time to try and get hold of former players and coaches and other people, now is the time to do that. Essentially, I've always been fascinated about the Lions and, the fact that they reinvent themselves every 4 years with a new team, a new coaching and management structure, and the challenge to go and beat one of the great Southern Hemisphere superpowers of rugby. And that still remains as strong now as it's ever done.
When you captained them, this was the end of the amateur era, the last Lions tour before the World Cup and professionalism and everything else. Looking back now, how did you find that from a personal point of view?
Probably the greatest honour that I ever received as a rugby player, and just having that honour of captaining the Lions. An awesome challenge at the same time. I've written about this in the book, and I'm speaking with Ian McGeechan. I always remember he made a couple of phone calls to me asking if I would be happy, if appointed, to be the captain of the British and Irish Lions on their tour to New Zealand. I said, Geech, I'm not sure why you were asking this question, because you know the answer to it. And I sort of put the phone down, and he was in a meeting with selectors in those days. They had selectors from each of England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales. There was a bit of horse trading back and forth with regard to each of these selectors fighting their own corner from their own country was concerned. And, I was quite perturbed when I heard about that. It's just one of the stories that were in the book. And, you've got to get the best players. And if that means there's no room for Scots or Irish, English or Welsh, then so be it. Your challenge is to go down and, as I say, try and win 2 out of 3 test matches against Australia, New Zealand or South Africa. And if you can do that, then you come back a hero. And having that knowledge that you've won on tour with the Lions will last with you forever.
And I think that still niggles at you, doesn't it, 28 years on?
Yeah, I suppose I'm able to laugh too, but you're right. There is a little niggle in the back of my mind that just wonders, without that sort of horse trading, whether we would have had the success to bring home the Test series as opposed to a narrow defeat. But, hey-ho, you can't live your life in the past and you have to move on. And, I suppose I do think about it every now and again, but it doesn't ruin my life in any way.
Now, I was down at Abbotsford this morning having a little look at the venue. What a stunning place it is, and what a great setting for your show, talking about your book, of course, Legacy of the Lions. And I guess there'll be something a wee bit different for you as well. I know you've given lots of talks before, etc., but in the setting of Abbotsford, the home of Sir Walter Scott, pretty neat as well.
Yeah, looking forward to it enormously. And I was at the Borders Book Festival a few years ago with the great PC Brown, and we did a talk there. And it was brilliant. I love coming down to the Borders.
When people come along to your event, so what can they expect to see?
Well, they can expect to see me, and they can expect to get their money out, and they can expect to buy a book, which I'll happily sign for them, and they can pass that on to a friend or relation for the Christmas. And I'm hoping that we can generate a few sales. If there's an opportunity, which hopefully there will be, for people to ask them questions. And, I promise to answer the questions as truthfully and as honestly as possible. And, I think that's the benefit that you can get from attending the book festival, is that you do get up close and personal with the authors of the book. That will add to people's enjoyment of the afternoon. I hope that a lot of people will come along. I hope they'll enjoy it, and I hope they'll go away and buy the book as well. So win-win for everybody, and, I'm looking forward to it enormously already.
Well, there should be 3 very entertaining events at the Abbotsford House, the home of Sir Walter Scott, and I'm sure you'll be enjoying some of them. All the details will be on the website, and it all starts down there on November the 2nd. Well, another big event happening this Saturday, Dale, is Scotland against Tonga, the first of the 4 autumn tests, and, sweeping changes from Gregor Townsend. Obviously, he can only pick home-based players for this one, as we know, but 4 definite new caps starting and 4 on the bench.
Yeah, I think the team's obviously reasonably experimental. I think it's quite good you've obviously welcomed back a few Lions as well, so it's not too experimental. You've obviously got a bit of experience in there as well, but it's a test that's been almost shoehorned in. I think it's maybe a highlight of the lack of real top-class international rugby we've seen during the last couple of years. So it's going to be a tough task, especially against Tonga, big hitters. I think it's a sign of what's to come. You can see the depth in the Scotland squad, which is quite good. I think there's a lot of players there. I think there's some areas where maybe a little bit weak in terms of 10. I think Blair Kinghorn slotting in at 10 highlights a little bit of lack of depth there. But you've got Ross Thompson to come off the bench and come on and get his first cap, so it's going to be interesting to see what impact he can make.
From a Borders point of view, Darcy Graham starting at fullback. Yeah,
I think I absolutely love Darcy Graham. I think he's one of my favourite players. I remember when he started in the cup final against Boroughmuir, I think when his first senior season, really, he's just one of those unorthodox, wiry, menacing back 3 players. And going in at fullback, it's maybe against a top tier nation, it wouldn't be maybe the best position for him to be in, but I think he'll maybe get a little bit more time, and the kick chase might not be too accurate as it would be maybe against the likes of South Africa. So a chance to experiment, try him there. It certainly gives you something different but yet similar to Stuart Hogg, if there was ever that change. So I think that's the thing with Darcy Graham. He's dynamic. He's able to change these positions because attacking wise, he's one of the most fearsome runners in world rugby because of just what he can do. He can duck under you, he can go around you, he can beat you on the spot. He's had a great start to the league this year as well, so hopefully he can now kick on and nail one of those jerseys in the back 3 and make it his own.
Okay, so that's the Scotland match. Kicks off at 2:30. It's on Amazon Live. Of course, you can always listen to TalkSport. Stuart McFarlane will be there with Chris Patterson. Okay, well, finally, let's have a look at what is in store for us this weekend. Tomorrow, Stirling Wolves against Melrose. That's being played at Bridge Hall in Tennent's National 1. There's also the Doddy Weir Club Trophy between Southern Knights and Newcastle Falcons, looking for a big crowd down there. I think it was over 5,000 when it was at Kingston Park a few years back as well, and that was a big win for Newcastle Falcons. But it's not really about that. It's all about Doddy Weir and raising money.
Yeah, I think it's it's a great link between, Doddy played a lot of his amateur rugby at Melrose and then went on and made a name for himself at Newcastle Falcons, and he's synonymous with both clubs really. He's still a part of the fabric of what has helped evolve those clubs to where they are now. And I think although it's under the Southern Knights guys, I think it's such a nice gesture, but it's also a nice link. It's also a nice opportunity for some players to put their name on the map as well. At the end of the day, it's still a competitive game of rugby between the two sides. So, hopefully it's a big crowd, Friday night lights. It's a good opportunity to get down to the Green Yards and take in some good competitive action, but also all the hosting they've got on as well. I know there's a lot of refreshments, a lot of beer to be had, so I'm sure there'll be a big crowd at the Green Yards.
Absolutely, and of course we mustn't forget the big semi-junior match that we hinted at earlier. It's Hawick Youth unbeaten against Melrose Wasps, unbeaten under the lights at Volunteer Park, and of course we'll be there.
Yeah, I think it's probably that, even though there's you've got the adult rugby on this weekend, I think that's probably one of the fixtures on paper out the whole weekend, and I think that almost highlights what you've been doing over recent weeks. It's putting them at the forefront as well. They've got big fixtures, and that's going to be the internationals of the future, hopefully, and there could be a couple in that game, so it's going to be a competitive fixture. Hawick obviously still maintaining that unbeaten record, just sneaking past Peebles, but Melrose were exceptional against Kelso, really polished. Maybe the last 15 minutes in that game they kind of fell off a little bit and it did get a little bit scrappy, but the game was won by then. I think they were pretty comfortable, so it'll be a really interesting game, really competitive, and I'm sure if it's a nice dry day, which I hope it is, it'll be really fast paced, good skill set, and one of them has to be beaten at this point, so they'll not have tasted that yet this year, so it'll be interesting to see which team will come out on top.
Well, the rain's supposed to stop at 6 o'clock and it's kick-off 7:30, so fingers crossed that will be the case. And I'm particularly looking forward to the Battle of the Douglases. Finn Douglas for Melrose, Finlay Douglas for Hawick Youth.
I've not seen too much live of Finlay Douglas, but Finn Douglas is a good player. He's exceptional. I thought his performance against Kelso, you just watch back that try that he scored in the opening couple of minutes, just pace, good balanced runner. He's certainly, he can shift and bounce off both feet, quick across the ground. He links up well as well. He's not a greedy player, so yeah, I'm sure either Douglas, at least there'll be a Douglas that wins, but I'm sure both Douglases will have an impact on that game this week.
Now, on to the Tenants Premiership on Saturday. A lot of different times, of course. 12:30 for GHA against Jed Forest, 12:30 for Hawick against Mar, and Selkirk against Aberdeen Grammar, which we hope, fingers crossed, is going to be on. It's supposed to be our commentary game, and we all know what's happened before with the last twice that we've tried to get Selkirk on commentary, so fingers crossed. I know that there's COVID in the Aberdeen camp, and last week's game for Aberdeen was off, so we're hoping that Philippa will stage that one at 12:30.
I think Selkirk, it's a good opportunity for them, like we said about Jed a few weeks ago, to put a bit of daylight in between them and Aberdeen Grammar, because they've really been poor this year, and I don't think Selkirk have been poor. I think they've been unlucky. Jed as well against GHA, that's a good opportunity to try and get that momentum back into their campaign. But Hawick, I think that is almost it's almost close to the Hawick Melrose game in terms of game of the weekend, but that's a huge game. That is the pinnacle of Scottish amateur rugby at the moment, because Mar against Hawick at Mansfield Park is going to have a big say in who's going to get a little bit of momentum in this championship race, because Mar have been really, really good, but Hawick have grown and grown each week, and I think welcoming back Andrew Mitchell and Sean Muir is a huge bonus for them, so that'll be an interesting game.
And Mar, as we said a couple of times as well, they don't fire on all cylinders usually in the borders.
No, they hate the border. They've always hated it. They're a bit Howie Fifey that way, because Howie Fife never used to like coming down to the borders. They don't travel. I think it's a different brand of rugby. Different regions in Scotland have different ways of playing, and the borders has a brand of rugby, different variants from the clubs. But it's tenacious. It's really fiery. The borders players are all passionate, and I dare say you're not going to get a more passionate bunch than the Hawick guys, because they're a really close-knit unit, and for Mar to come down, they'll be met with a big green wall, so it's going to be an interesting game. But Mar have the Bickerstaffs as well. They've got really good players in that cohort, and they've been going really, really well. So it's a battle that Hawick need to win, and they're unbeaten at home as well, so there's a lot to play for.
One team, of course, that doesn't mind playing borders sides, particularly at Braidholme, is GHA, because they've already got victories against Hawick and Selkirk.
Yeah, and they're scoring tries as well, and I think against a Jed defence which looked a little bit leaky against Hoyk, that's dangerous for Jed Forest. But I do feel that Jed are almost just ready to get going. They've got a really good nucleus of players, which I've spoke about over and over again. I think I'm a big admirer of Jed Forest. I think they're a really good club, got really good players. I just feel that they've maybe not got that confidence to win that battle yet. I just feel they're maybe just standing off a little bit and expecting too much to happen for themselves. So hopefully it's a difficult place to travel, but hopefully they can get a win on the road. But they do need to stamp their authority on the game and really take it from the start if they're going to have anything, if they're going to get anything from that game, because as we know, GHA, they're a difficult team, especially at home.
Couple of home matches in National 1. Gala against Cartha Queen's Park, which should be rather tasty. Cartha getting a victory against Highland last week, and Kelso against Dundee, and Dundee took the scalp of Ayr. Yeah,
I think we're starting to see this league kind of settle a little bit as well. I think all the leagues have maybe taken a few games as they usually do, but I think the Gala Cartha one's a big one because Cartha run Melrose Close a few weeks ago, and if Gala are really considering themselves to be contenders in this league, this is a game that they'll need to pick up 4 if not 5 points. They'll obviously be focusing on the win first, but Cartha obviously came down to the Borders a few weeks ago and gave Melrose a bit of a fright. Gala did quite comfortably beat Melrose, but it's a different game. It's a game resets. You're playing a different set of opponents. Sometimes their strengths can highlight your weaknesses, and it might not work the same in every game. So I think for Gala, they'll really need to put in a performance and keep the pressure up the top. But Kelso, I'll be looking to try and put the wheels back on and get that momentum, because again they're starting to fall into that middle tier in the league, which I don't think they want to do, and I don't think they merit that with the players they've got. But you can see how competitive this league's getting now with Ayr, Heriots, Gala, bigger, Highland even playing well as well. So it's a tough league.
And both those games kicking off at 12:30. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff though for our two teams in National 2 and National 3. Peebles away at Hamilton, who have been disappointing this season. So again, you would expect Peebles to come away with a win there. And Berwick at home to West of Scotland, who are second in the table with a negative points difference.
Berwick are probably in a more precarious position where they've already lost a couple of games against teams towards the top of the league, so they can ill afford to lose any games, certainly not at home. So they'll be wanting to try and build on the back of a good performance last week and a good win against another team who are up towards the top. So a tough one, but Scremerston's a difficult place to go, especially if it's breezy and wet on Saturday afternoon.
Well, into the East League, Duns against Haddington. That's a 3 o'clock kick-off. In East League 2, Hoytlandine at home to Dunbar, 12:30 for that one. Trinity Accies against Langham at Bangham, 3 o'clock kick-off for there. And Galloway M away at Lismore, another 3 o'clock kick-off. And then finally on to Sunday, Kelso Ladies against West of Scotland in the Tennent's Women's National 1. But that's just about it for this week from us. Thanks very much indeed to Dale. And of course, all our guests, Ian Landles, Billy Gillies, Gavin Hastings, Tom English, Dave Cowan and Craig Dods for taking part in the programme. We'll be back again next Thursday for Borders Rugby in Focus.